Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the third and final webinar in our three-part webinar series on Microsoft 365 Copilot. My name is Mike Tansey. I'm the head of sales at Chess, and with me today I have the fantastic James Mallalieu, who's our senior AI and Microsoft 365 consultant. In today's session, James and I will be running through some Copilot demos, talking about the importance of bringing your users on board with you on that Copilot journey. And by the end of today, we really hope you'll leave with a clear understanding of how to best bring those users on board, how to navigate some of those common pitfalls, and really to enable you to have a smooth adoption of the Copilot services within your organization. For those that haven't been to a Chess webinar before, I'll run through just a little bit of housekeeping. So firstly, the session is being recorded, a copy of which will be made available to you all tomorrow. We'll also send out the slides. For any questions, we're saving 15 minutes at the end of the webinar, but if you want to post your questions as you go, so don't forget, please use the Q&A tab at the top of the screen. And finally, we're offering a one-to-one workshop for each of the companies here today. Now, this is a consultant-led session to discuss your specific Microsoft 365 Copilot scenarios with James and the team. To take us up on this, simply tick the request follow-up button in the survey or scan the QR code at the end and the team will be in touch. Before I hand over to James, though, I'll cover a quick overview to Chess. Okay, so we are one of the UK's leading independent technology service providers dedicated to making it easy for businesses to work securely, anywhere, anytime. We have a team of 280 IT professionals supporting over 18,000 customers, and we turn over just over 50 million annually. We offer a comprehensive range of services across 6 key areas. So just going down the coloured ribbons in sequence. So firstly, Connect for your internet, mobile voice and data needs. Secondly, Cloud for infrastructure, platform and software as a service offerings. Thirdly, Devices for your laptops, the hardware and networking components as well. Digital services for anything AI, Microsoft 365, Power Platform and data services. Security for that end-to-end security services ranging from pen tests and cyber essentials through to managed SOCs combined with the strength of our sister company CyberLab. And lastly, professional services for providing consultancy, project management, user adoption and managed services. Our mission really at Chess is to help businesses reduce costs, protect data and work better together using technology. And we achieve this through forming long-term strategic partnerships based on trust and results. And that's really Chess in a nutshell. So I'll now hand over to James to kick off the webinar. James, over to you, please.
Thanks very much, Mike. Welcome everyone to today's session. So this is the third session in a series that we've been running, as Mike said, around Copilot. And these sessions we've designed to help organisations understand Copilot, plan for their deployment of Copilot, and in this session we're going to talk about scenarios in respect of the people. If you have missed any of our previous sessions, then the link on the deck that you can see at the moment will take you to the recordings of the previous sessions. So to kick us off, a reminder for those that Copilot in Microsoft 365 comes in 2 editions. It comes firstly as Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat, which is essentially available to anyone with a Microsoft 365 license. So pretty much everyone in your organization that has a mailbox will have this instance of Copilot available to them. And effectively, this instance allows them to research information that exists out in the public domain, the internet, and also generate content. There's also a paid-for edition of Copilot, which is paid on a per user per month basis, that allows you to interrogate information that exists within your own Microsoft 365 environment and is also integrated into your desktop tools, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, etc. So just quickly to make sure we're on the same page, a quick demo of these. So in this screen, I'm in the web edition of Microsoft 365 Copilot. So this is essentially the edition that every user in your organization that has a mailbox will have access to. Now, I'm hoping if you're currently using this, you've seen the refresh that Microsoft have pushed out over the last couple of weeks, which has changed the user experience subtly, and this will represent what you see in your own environment. But essentially, in terms of this tool, what I can do is get it to perform some research for me based on information that exists out on the internet. So if I'm asking it, what are the key features of Microsoft 365 Copilot? It's going away to gather the information that it finds on the internet, and it's constructing to me a response and presenting that back to me. And you can see in this response that it's signposting the citations, i.e. the sources where it's retrieved that piece of content from. If I change the tab and go to the work scenario, this is where the paid for instance of Copilot comes into play. And effectively, this provides access to the content within Microsoft 365 that I as an individual have access to. My mailbox, my calendar, my OneDrive, SharePoint sites and SharePoint content I have rights to access, and Microsoft Teams, chat and channel conversations. So if within here, I ask a question, tell me about the super secret project, then this is going away to the Microsoft 365 environment based on my rights, and it's finding information about the super secret project. And you can see here, it's generating a response. And again, the citations tell me where that information's come from. So I can see here, this is coming from a Word document. This is coming from a OneNote notebook. And that one down there is coming from an email. Now, in addition to having access to content within Microsoft 365 that I as a user do, the paid for edition of Copilot is also integrated into your desktop tools. So for instance, if I go into Word and I say I'm going to create a new document, but I want to create a document on the basis of another document. So I'm going to ask Copilot, so create an exec summary of another document. So my / allows me to find files I've recently accessed. So the super secret project brief. And then I'm going to click go. And what this is going to do is effectively generate an exec summary based on the content that exists on that other document. Okay. Now I have covered more in our first webinar about the differences between these two tools, free and the paid for. So if you're interested in understanding more, then I'd suggest that's a good webinar to watch. Okay, so when we're thinking about the users, the first principle that I want to make clear
Oh, James, we've lost your audio.
There we are.
There we go. Yep.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Some people might think that's a good thing. So the good thing about, the key principle here is that Copilot acts on behalf of the individual. Okay, it's activated by choice and guided by the person. Now, what I mean by that is that Copilot on its own does nothing. So if you decide to buy licenses and deploy them, and you provide no education to your people within your organization, you'll get very little value out of Copilot, because Copilot doesn't do anything unless a person prompts it to do something. And when the person prompts it to do something and Copilot responds, it's also for the user, the person, to make the decision of how to use that response. So I think of Copilot myself as my own personal digital assistant. So when I need some assistance with something, I ask of Copilot that task. Copilot responds to me, and then I decide how to use that information. Okay. Now, a lot of people are under the illusion that when you enable AI within your environment, AI is going to start to go and do things with your data on its own volition. Okay. And whilst there is a concept of what we call autonomous agents, where AI, using AI, will interact with your data, that is something that you would design and build and implement and manage yourself, and something that I'm hoping to cover in a future webinar. But for the purpose of today, it's important to realize that the user, the person, is the person that invokes Copilot, and that person also decides what to do with the response that Copilot's provided. So let me show you that kind of in a bit more detail. So if I go back to Copilot and I'm going to ask it a question. So I'm going to ask it, generate me a simple list of 5 well-known facts and include a reference to where I can find more information about those facts. Now, it might surprise some of you to know that some information that exists on the internet is actually not valid and not correct and not truthful. But I've asked Copilot to give me a list of 5 well-known facts. Now, I'm not going to get into a debate about what revolves around the sun, etc. But I'm pretty sure from my rudimentary education at school that this fact here is true. Water boils at 100 degrees at sea level. Now, the reason why I'm demonstrating this is because I could therefore use that fact in a document I'm writing. But the key thing is me as the individual, me as the human, I have to validate that that fact is truthful and accurate. And whilst I may know that because I remember it from school, I have this citation here that says, well, this is where I got the fact from. And apparently this site is called 10 examples of reliable sources and how they impact your search. So it must be truthful. But what I'm alluding to here is when it comes to user education and helping your users adopt and make use of Copilot, it's really important to help people understand that they need to fact check what Copilot is responding to before they then share that with the wider audience. Okay. Now, just to demonstrate that further, let's say this is a really interesting 5 facts. So I'm going to say, because I work for a multinational company, I'm going to say, okay, I need to publish it out, some information to our colleagues in China. So I'm going to translate it into Cantonese. Now, my Cantonese is, I'm going to say, rusty at best. So I've translated that content to Cantonese. Is it accurate? To be honest, I've no idea. Would I just paste that and post it out on the social media? Definitely not. I would get a human who speaks Cantonese to validate it, or probably more likely, I would give them this content to translate. And again, I'm just highlighting the principle here that people need to understand that what Copilot is responding to, they are responsible for ensuring its validity. Now, that's obviously using information that exists out in the public domain. If we go into our work environment, and we use a similar example. If I go back to my principle that says, tell me about the super secret project, then this is gathering information that I legitimately have access to about the super secret project. But one of the things that you'll notice here when it comes back with my response is that this information has been tagged as being highly confidential. Okay, it's not for wider consumption in the organization. And what Copilot's done for me here is it's told me that. It's given me a little shield here, which when I hover over says highly confidential. So it's basically saying to me, if you take this content now and email it to the broader organization, you've elected to do that, right? But I've made it clear to you this information is confidential. Now, I don't want to get into how you can prevent users then mailing that out, because that's a different discussion. This is about me as the person understanding that Copilot's responding to content that I have rights to. That content is confidential, so I need to be mindful as to how I use it. Again, it's for me as the user. And then the next example, if you recall that when I went into Word and I said, generate an executive summary based on my super secret project brief, you notice here that whilst Copilot's generated content, you see this at the bottom, keep it or discard. Copilot hasn't automatically updated my document. It's left it to me as the user to make the decision that what it's generated here is authoritative, accurate, and correct. So I can click, okay, I'm going to keep that. I'm happy with that. And the same goes for any changes across Copilot. If I ask it to rewrite this, so I'm going to say rewrite it. And anyone's seen one of my webinars before, they know I'm very keen on piratey stuff. So in the style of a pirate, so it's going to rewrite that opening sentence, but you'll notice it hasn't replaced it. Okay, it said, I've come up with this. Do you want me to replace it? Do you want me to have it another go? Or do you want to give me more instructions because that's not quite what you wanted? And this is true throughout many, many areas within Copilot, okay? It's not doing something without the user themselves making a decision. And when you're thinking about educating people, you're thinking about helping people make use of it, this is the fundamental principle that's important to articulate to them. I won't replace that. Now, a common one that I see organizations in their early phases of adoption of Copilot is to use Copilot to generate meeting summaries and follow-up actions. So I'm sure you've seen this scenario before, that a meeting gets recorded, and at the end of the meeting, if you're licensed correctly, you'll get an AI-generated summary, which takes the transcript of the meeting and auto-generates a summary of what was discussed during the meeting. And in a lot of cases, it will generate some suggested follow-up tasks. Now, the thing is, this summary is only available to internal people who joined that meeting, and they need to be licensed. So in a lot of cases, this content needs to be emailed or distributed out, for instance, to external participants or people who aren't licensed. And often what I see is people say, okay, that looks about fine. I'll just click copy or I'll use the option share to Outlook, okay? And they don't read what it said. And so what happens is you get, this is fine, it's generated by AI. And be sure to check for your accuracies, a pointer for me, not for the people I send the meeting notes for. But people often don't edit things out that have been incorrectly summarized by the AI, or the follow-up actions haven't been checked. So again, as the human, I need to do those checks and balances on the content that AI produces. Okay. So, next slides. So hopefully that principle is kind of clear to people. Now, when it comes to planning your rollout, all organizations are different. They're starting from a different place. They've got different constraints. They've got varying sets of users, different skills of users. So I'm talking about some broad generic concepts here that within your own organizations, you need to kind of match them to yourselves. But broadly, most importantly, make sure that you have key stakeholders supporting your rollout activity. Senior people who have the ability to drive through cultural change. Okay, and that's true of all adoption and change management projects. So I'm not really going to cover that in detail here because it's not unique to Copilot. The second thing is understand what AI is already in use within your organization. And often when I ask people, they say, well, we don't use anything. But in reality, when you talk to individual people, they'll say, yeah, I use ChatGPT, or I use Gemini, or at home I use these tools, or et cetera, et cetera. So it's useful to either do a survey or interview people, or what you can do within 365, obviously, is you can look yourself. And if I go into Copilot and I go into the reports and I go into usage, and then I go into Microsoft 365 Copilot usage, I can have a look So within your own environment, up to the last 180 days, you can have a look who's using Copilot. And this will give you information about both Copilot Chat, Copilot, the paid for edition, if you've rolled that out. It will give you information about whether people are utilizing agents. And if you have rolled out the Copilot paid for edition, it will give you some insight into which applications people are using it within. And this can be a good kind of interesting point just to understand where you are from an organization point of view. Now, you can get metrics about the people that make up these numbers if that's something that you want. And therefore, when we start talking about planning, if you're looking for what I would call digital champions or early adopters, this will give you some metrics about people who may be already using Copilot extensively, and they may be great candidates to help you drive through change in your organization. Now, the other thing to consider is the Copilot user experience. So obviously, like most products, once you enable the license, the default experience is pretty good for what Copilot does. But it's important to understand how people will use it and what they will use, and make those decisions, both for an initial pilot, maybe your early rollout, and then consider that over time. So a few things just to pinpoint that you might want to experience in respect of the user experience. So the first thing is that Copilot is accessible through many different points within the user experience. Now, today I'm just going to show the kind of desktop experience, but add to this also the mobile device experience. You do have quite a lot of places to consider the user can get into Copilot. The obvious one is if I go to Microsoft 365 Copilot, I get to Copilot. And this, as I'm sure you might have realized, is replacing the traditional Microsoft 365 home experience. But that's not the only place I can access Copilot from. You'll notice up in Microsoft Edge, I have a Copilot tool here. And this allows me to open a panel that gives me access to Copilot Chat, Work, and Web. Okay. This is quite useful, by the way, because if you're looking at a page on the internet, you can ask the web edition just to make a summary of the page you're currently looking at. So if you're looking at something other than Microsoft 365, you can kind of use Copilot to ask questions of the page you're currently looking at. In addition to that, Copilot also is available within Microsoft Teams. Now, this is again true for whether you're just rolling out the web version or the paid for version. And likewise, Microsoft Outlook. Let me just close that message. Now, the reason why I mention these is because in reality, most people that I speak to are likely to spend more time in either Teams and or Outlook than they are to go to the Microsoft 365 Copilot tool. Teams and Outlook will be a more familiar user experience, so you might kind of focus your user adoption and education around using these tools as your entry point into Copilot. Another consideration for you is, are you going to allow people to build and use agents? Now, again, this capability is available to you irrespective of whether you use the free edition or the work edition. So if you don't change the default settings, people will be able to build and use agents, okay? Now, if you are going to allow people to build and use agents, the question you might have is, do we need to support a pay-as-you-go model for users who aren't licensed for full Copilot? Okay, now again, today's not the day to talk about that in detail. I'm just indicating some of the kind of decision points you might have to make in respect of understanding the user experience. A new feature, or a feature that's been evolved in this latest iteration, is the Create here. And this gives a very powerful set of capabilities for creating images, posters, videos, banners, etc. And these can make use of what we call your organization brand kits, so that you can specify color palettes, fonts, logos, so that when these artifacts are being created, they make use of organization standard branding. Now, you might say, we don't want people to create images. We don't want them to create videos. We don't want them to create posters. So you might want to disable that option. Now, all these options, they're all available for you to configure. And within what's called the Copilot Control Center, which is here in the Admin Center, there is a tab for settings. And within settings, many of the things I've alluded to are configurable within here. So for instance, if we go into Copilot Actions, that's the setting for image generation, data access, that's the setting for agents. There is a pay-as-you-go one, which they've moved to a different place, but there's a pay-as-you-go setting. These settings are all available, and they're all kind of questions that you might want to ask when you're thinking about rolling out Copilot. Okay, now the last thing on my slide is plan your approach. Okay, now if you've got the ability to buy Copilot licenses for everyone, I still think as an organization, you need to pace yourself. So what I've done is I've put together a kind of a simple example plan. And I don't want you to think that this plan is the right plan for everyone. Clearly it's not. But to me, it allows me to explain some of the things typically we would recommend to an organization, okay, irrespective of size. So do some planning. I think that probably is the obvious point there. Don't just roll out the licenses, do some planning. And what you might then do is think, okay, we're going to do a pilot. We want a small number of users to get some experience, some knowledge, some exposure to what Copilot does. And you might say, we're going to roll out some people with Copilot Chat and some people with the paid for edition. Okay, this is very normal. Now, once you've done a pilot and you've kind of understood a few things about how Copilot works, you might want to embark on a process to bring up to speed digital accelerators. Now, I call them digital accelerators. You can call them digital champions. You can call them Copilot ninjas, or whatever word resonates within your organization. But these are the people that will help the wider group of people in their day-to-day use of the product. These are the people that you focus your effort on, because they will be, you know, your spokesman, your salespeople, whatever you call them. They will go out to the wider organization and really help with the day-to-day adoption. Now, you might combine these two things together, absolutely fine. Just depends on the size of organization. And then when you come to an organization rollout, you can see here what I've kind of alluded to is that it's very normal to have a whole load of people that you've deployed Copilot Chat for, but then a subset of people for the paid for license. And it's possible that your organization rollout may well be divided into multiple phases. You know, if you're an organization of 50 people, maybe not so much of an issue, but if you're 500, 5,000, 50,000, then you're going to want to do this in phases, okay? Now, underpinning everything here, people need support. So in my experience, when I've spoken to anyone who's had a Copilot license paid for, assigned to them, who's had no guidance and no support, overriding their answer is, do you know what? I haven't really used it. I've used the meeting recording a few times. And that's a great shame, because the organization has paid for that license. And it's not that the capabilities aren't there. It's just that that person hasn't had the opportunity to understand how those capabilities can be applied to their daily work. And that's kind of the key. So however you elect to do this, remember that to get the most out of Copilot and to get any form of demonstrable return on investment, you do need to support the users. Okay, this is a big change for some people. In fact, it's a big change for nearly everyone I speak to, irrespective of their technical background. So this comms, guidance, policies, and support is fundamental. Now, it goes without saying that Microsoft provide more resources than you can possibly imagine for this. Whether they're all suitable for you and whether they add value to you is a different question. But I thought I'd pinpoint the ones, some key ones, and the ones that I think are worth exploring, having a cursory look at. You know, you can make a decision yourself as to whether these things will actually add value to you. But I'm just going to point them to you because there is a huge amount of resources available. So the first one I'm going to go to is the Adoption Center, and the link's on the slide. And this is kind of your gateway to many of the resources that Microsoft provide. So you can see here it's divided into Copilot Chat, Microsoft 365 Copilot, and AI Agents. And if you select these, they give various resources according to different roles that you can use. So if we, for instance, go into Microsoft 365 Copilot, and one of the ones I really like is the interactive scenario library. So this kind of helps, based on job role, how an individual might make use of Copilot on a day-to-day basis. So this is great because it puts it into the context of someone, for instance, who works in HR. Now, let's have a look at a scenario. I'm going to say, show me all the HR scenarios. And I'm going to scroll down here and I'm going to use, let's say, recruiting. And I'm going to pick one that, streamline your recruiting process. Available with Microsoft 365 Chat, right? So you don't need any paid for licenses to do this one. And how this works is it talks about, these are the 6 steps. And for each of the steps, it gives you a nice prompt. Okay, now I'm not going to run through these. It's something to see if you're interested to go away and do. But this is a great way of kind of having a look at how someone might use Copilot in respect of a given task that they have to do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And the scenario library, you can download them. You can, these are available for anyone to use. There's some great examples in them. Some of them do get, I'm going to say, a little bit complicated, but nonetheless, there is some great examples in there. If I go back to the Adoption Center, one of the other ones that I like in here is if I go to the Copilot Success Kit, if you're looking for templates and you're looking for things that you can use and you don't mind the Microsoft-esque branding, then there is some great resources here. So let's have a look at Copilot user engagement tools and templates. And if we go into here, you can download onboarding templates. They used to do, and I couldn't find it, I looked quickly this morning, a really great calendar, which is a prompt to try every day for a month. I kind of think of it as a bit like an advent calendar, but for Copilot. That every day it gives you a nice simple prompt to try. And it's the sort of thing that what you're trying to do is say to the user, look, here's something to try every day. You're trying to build the habit of people feeling confident going in to ask Copilot things. So we've got prompts, do's and don'ts. We've got top 10 things to try with Copilot Chat, etc., etc. So this is a great thing. Explore it yourself. My only caveat is you can sometimes, there's too much in here. And, one thing I'd say is don't just point an end user at this and say, fill your boots, see how you get on. Users do not have time, the enthusiasm to go and search and look through endless material. So get the balance right, find what might be useful to you and repurpose it, reuse it. But don't just point users at this because it's, they'll quickly, I think, be turned off the experience. And the last one I'm going to talk about is the prompt gallery. And this actually is one of my favorites, but it may be not a day one thing. So you'll notice everywhere within Copilot, there is suggested prompts. So I'm on web, suggested prompts, work, suggested prompts. And if you look further, there's a see more. And if you expand see more, you get a whole load of suggested prompts. But right down at the bottom, you get something called the prompt gallery. And the prompt gallery is a central resource of prompts that both Microsoft publish, you publish as an individual, and you publish to your teams that you work with. So if I go into my prompt gallery, you can see here Microsoft prompts, and these are divided into different tasks and different jobs. And then we've got my prompts. So I've got a prompt here called official tone, which allows me to rewrite any piece of content using the official tone of an organization. So I want it at hand, so I just want it to be able to ask it the same prompt frequently. Now you'll notice these prompts appear throughout the Microsoft 365 toolset. So for instance, if I go to let's go to Outlook. So if I go into Outlook and I've got Copilot here, down at the bottom, view prompts, click on that one, and you can see what Outlook does is say, okay, what is it that you want? Do you want to schedule a meeting? So if I click in schedule, it gives me a couple of sample prompts. Do I want to catch up on something? It gives me some prompts. Do I want to ask a question? It gives me some prompts. You kind of get the idea. So the prompt gallery is a really useful way, once people are aware it's there, of helping them just explore some of the capabilities that are available. For you as an individual, if you write a prompt you want to reuse, put it in prompt gallery. And if you write a prompt that you want to be available to your broader team or a set of teams, then share it with the set of teams. So I'm a great fan of the prompt gallery. Okay. So one thing to be aware of is that whenever you reach the point that says, I think I've finished, you've done your organization rollout, I'm going to come along and say, you've just started. Because once you've got to the point where you've rolled out something to all the people that you're going to roll them out and you think, I've done and dusted, you're into the phase that we call business as usual. And one of the things that Copilot, particularly at the moment, is a great example of is it is not static. In fact, it's changing at such a phenomenal rate that just keeping up to date with capabilities, features, roadmaps is my full-time job. So as an organization, you do need to consider not just your initial deployment, but what is business as usual? What does business as usual mean for you as an organization? And I've pinpointed 3 things that I think are important as part of your what business as usual means. Okay. Firstly, you are going to have joiners, new joiners, and they will come from organizations that maybe are more mature in their adoption of Copilot, less mature in adoption of Copilot, and anything in between. So you need a mechanism to bring new people on board and take them through the same process that you've taken all the existing people through, okay? The next one is you want to be able to measure usage of Copilot. You want to be able to, first of all, demonstrate value for money, but you also want to be able to target additional training and support and guidance around capabilities that maybe aren't being used. So if we were to go into our usage analytics, I'm going to go back to my usage, but instead of usage, I'm going to go to adoption score. For those who don't know, that there's an adoption score for many capabilities within 365 relating to, collaboration, teamwork, mobility. And the latest one in there is called AI adoption. Now, this is a demo tenancy. So the AI adoption is kind of quite low. So 35 out of 100. Now, people will say, what does that mean, 35 out of 100? My answer is it means nothing it just gives you a benchmark with which to demonstrate you're either on an upward trend with that number or a downward trend. Microsoft do talk about how the score's calculated, but the thing that I like looking at is, okay, how many people use Copilot on a regular basis, consecutive days? Or, sorry, let me zoom in so you can see that a bit better. So on this one, it's saying just within Teams, here is a set of capabilities within Teams. How many people are using Copilot within those capabilities? Now, you may find that very few people are using intelligent recap, either meeting summarization. So you think, okay, good, let's do some training on that. Let's provide some guidance. If we go into documents, I've currently got Word selected. I can select any of the other ones, but what features are people using within Word? And the same with Outlook. So this is a great way of kind of thinking about which features are being used, where you've got high utilization, great. Where you've got low utilization, that usually means there's an opportunity for a bit of training and education. Then we can look at agent utilization. So how many people are using agents? How many people are using prompts in Copilot chat? Now on agents, it won't surprise you to know that we can go into our utilization of agents. We go into usage, we go into Copilot here, then one of the tabs they've added recently is called agents. And this will give you some trends of agent utilization, either in total or over time. And it will also give you details of the agents being used. When it comes to Copilot changing, then the place I would suggest the kind of Copilot owners to look at to start with, two resources I would definitely recommend you use. So in the Copilot Control Center in Health, there is a summary here called Copilot Changes and New Features. This will list the most important features that are being deployed into your tenancy, okay? The most important. Now you can see here over the last week, I've got 3. Right, easy to keep on top of. Well, if I actually go to the message center and I look at all the Copilot ones, you can see here over the last day, there's 6 of them. And if I look at the last week, there's a whole load more. Now, it only reports the most important ones in the Copilot Control Center. If you are interested in looking at these, obviously it's available to you, but my experience is people quickly just say, I just haven't got time. So if you haven't got time, then the next best thing is Microsoft issue a monthly What's New in Copilot. And it is, let me just see if I've got the one here. They have actually issued the June one, but in the Microsoft blog, Copilot blog, this is the one I'd subscribe to, okay? It is a far more condensed, and by condensed, I apologize in advance, you can see when I scroll through, it's still quite long, but this gives you that monthly kind of snapshot of the things that are changing within Copilot. So this is, if all you do is read one thing over the month, this is what I'd have a look at. But, you know, be aware things are changing at a rate. As I said, the interface here has, this is all recent changes, the ability to create Copilot notebooks is a new feature, the way that they supported this creation of content is a new feature. I could go on and on. So yeah, buckle up because it does change very quickly. Okay, so what I've kind of wanted to do in this session is just pinpoint a couple of points. So one, users do need education, they do need guidance. And it's important to know that it's the user that initiates Copilot to do something, and it's the user that has the responsibility to take what Copilot's done and use it, be it share it with a broader set of people, update documents, whatever it is they're going to do. And that's a really important principle to instill in people. When you're planning your rollout, do think about both Copilot Chat and the paid for edition. And do think about a gradual rollout. You can do it over a short period of time. I guess what I'm saying is, don't just license everyone day one for Copilot paid for licenses and say my job's done. Great if you've got the sort of resources to do that, but that's not the way to drive successful adoption. And then finally, that when you are at the end of your rollout process, remember that's not the end of the story. You must consider business as usual and how Copilot will evolve, how you'll manage it, and how you take advantage of the new features that are being added all the time. So with that, I will hand over to my able colleague, Mike.
Cheers, James. A really informative session, as always, with some great golden nuggets in there. I think I've lost count the amount of times I've seen AI summaries with clear mistakes. They've not been validated by the users. And I really like the prompt gallery. It's certainly working for us in my team, just to be able to share the prompts that are working well for you so that others can benefit from those. Okay, so hopefully this webinar has provoked some thought around how you can enhance your user journey into Copilot. For those of you asking yourself, well, where do we go from here? We have some starters for 10 to get you going. As a reminder, so if all you want to do is deploy Copilot Chat, these aren't relevant for yourselves. If, however, you're looking to deploy the paid for version of Copilot, we suggest opting for the standard or the premium AI accelerators. And these AI accelerators are predefined packages that will help you understand your data through data readiness assessments to highlight where the risks are today, which is particularly useful if you haven't yet considered the governance side of Copilot. There are also a predefined number of training workshops designed to aid your Copilot strategy around specific scenarios. So this could be, in theory, around governance, adoption, or getting the most out of Copilot. So it won't be an overnight fix, but we will help you navigate some of the common pitfalls and share ideas of what's worked well with other companies to get you off to a great start for Copilot. So I'll send out a few further details alongside the recording tomorrow. Okay, and just before we get into the Q&A, it's a reminder, if you have missed any of the previous webinars, what I will do is I'll just paste a link to those in the chat, and you can see the videos on the website. They are on the Silver Sands website and will be transferred to the Chess website shortly. Okay, so if we move on to the last slide, just in terms of the feedback and Q&A. So what I would like to do is ask everyone who's got a phone in front of them to kindly scan the Q&R code in the bottom left-hand corner and tell us how we did. Now, we do adapt these webinars based on the feedback, and there's an option there to book in a session directly with James. Now, this is a free of charge, technically led session to run through your Copilot scenario. I know a number of you on the call today have already booked these sessions, and it's great. The level of involvement and the questions coming out really shows great engagement on these. And just to kind of get some advice from somebody who's living and breathing Copilot like James on a daily basis. Okay, so we have approximately 10 minutes left, I'd say, and we'll dive into some of the questions. So I can see, please feel free to paste them in the Q&A section or message me directly if you don't wish to kind of share your name. I've got one already that's come through, James, which is, how long does it take to roll out Copilot? It's a nice, easy one to get started.
Well, I guess there's no set answer to that, but to give you some kind of context, that let's say for an organization in the realms of, say, up to, say, 250, 500 seats, you're probably, for the plan that I showed, looking at a 3 to 6 month activity. Now, the length of time it takes depends on how quickly and how available people are to attend training, and how long you want to allow them to use Copilot for you to then do the benchmarking of the adoption. So you can do it in a lot shorter time, but my feeling is, for someone who's going from never using Copilot at all to someone that's now kind of baked the use of Copilot into their day-to-day work, and I'm not going to say like maybe someone like myself does, but it's there, they're using it, they're comfortable using it. There needs to be a bit of time, there needs to be a bit of breathing space. So I would always make sure you leave enough time that when you then measure the end of the kind of sprint that you've done, you're getting an accurate measurement that it's not just people who've used it because they've gone on a training session, they've then used it for the next couple of days and forgotten about it. It's that you've got demonstrable usage over a period of time. So, we're not talking a lot of time, but you need it enough time for people to absorb it into their day-to-day activities, and that's the key thing. And the other thing I'd say about this is that in the webinar we did previously, where we talked about preparing your data, there may well be activities that run along in parallel with the user adoption that focuses on the governance and management of your data. And that can take, depending on what you're looking to achieve there, quite considerable time. So some organizations kind of look at dividing their Copilot rollout into a series of sprints. And I'm always a great fan of always have a kind of activity that has a defined start and end, and it's not too far in a distance, so everyone can really focus and be enthused on delivering it and getting to the end point, measuring it, saying where have we got to, stepping back, and then say, right, where do we go now? So personally, I'm not a great fan of having very long projects. Keep them short, keep them focused, keep them impactful, and then get your learnings and then go again and go again. And hence my point about rolling out maybe to waves of users. You don't have to do everything day one. You can do this in different phases and learn from each phase, apply your learning into the next phase, and just keep improving what you're doing.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you, James. And I guess as you kind of alluded to in the example plan, once you've done that phase, it doesn't ever stop. There's always new features, new stuff coming out. So it's just getting people excited about the next sprint, the next phase that comes out. I guess just on that phase question or waves question, can you assign Copilot licenses to people in waves and phases? Is that an option?
Yeah, and in fact, that's probably the reality what most people do, because there's a cost, right? So if you're a 250 person organization and you buy 250 Copilot licenses, you're paying for them day one. But if actually your rollout plan is to roll it out in 4 waves, then you can buy and then allocate licenses as you're ready to allocate that license. And as I said, it's I can't think of many organizations that I've been involved with where they've purchased Copilot licenses for everyone. It's far more likely they've rolled out or rolling out Copilot chat for everyone. And then the Copilot license is being done in waves and in phases. So absolutely do it in smaller defined sprints, whatever terminology makes sense to you, to minimize your expenditure on licenses for a start, to learn from it, to demonstrate value back to the people that are paying the bill for the license as well, because the stats tell you that you'll get a return of investment of 3 to 10 times the cost of the license. And I was talking to someone today about this. My £20 per month, I save that probably every hour of my working day. That saves me that money, but that's not true of everyone. So what's important is to build those scenarios, build those stories that allow you to play back to the organization to say, look, this is some real tangible evidence, not that Microsoft have told us, but that we have demonstrated how we've effectively used the license and how the license improves the quality or makes us more efficient, whatever the metric is.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think we work with a local fire and rescue service, and they said, well, it's no good just saying, well, that we've saved, Tom or Sarah 20 hours a month. Well, what are they doing with that time? Well, they've managed to repurpose and they've saved this initiative. So, yeah, that's really useful, James. And I guess a final question that's coming from Tom. Confused about the pay-as-you-go option. What is this for, and how does it work? That's a good question.
a question about Microsoft licensing being confusing. That's the first.
Yeah.
So the way to think about it is this. So everyone in your organization has a Copilot chat capability included within your Microsoft 365 licensing. And then everyone who you buy a Copilot license for then has a whole set of additional capabilities. But there are some capabilities that you want the user at the first end of the scale to make use of, but you don't want to pay for their £20 per user per month, right? So what the pay-as-you-go one does is allow you to bridge the gap between the two. So instead of saying, I know that James, or I'm just going to give a Copilot chat license for, isn't going to make use of the £20 per user per month license, right? But there is a certain set of capabilities that James will make use of that will benefit him, but I want to pay for those capabilities on a pay-as-you-go basis. So what I mean by pay-as-you-go is the more James uses it, the more it costs you effectively. Now, this doesn't relate to every capability, but the most common scenario is in the use of things like agents. I want to create an employee self-serve agent would be the most common one, where everyone in my organization, doesn't matter who they are, what role they are, needs the ability via a mobile device or desktop device to ask questions of employment process, employment terms and conditions, operating procedures. And I want to have that available to me. So that capability is obviously included within the Copilot paid for license, but that only relates to the people you've bought the licenses for. What about everyone else? Well, everyone else can get that capability, but you pay for it based on the users who use it, who aren't licensed for the paid for license. So it gives you a nice kind of way of bridging the free edition and the paid for edition with certain capabilities that you want to make use of, and you only want to pay for what you use.
That's it. Yeah, that's really good. So you simplified that complicated licensing answer, and Tom's just wrote, "Thank you, James," and giving you a big thumbs up there. Okay, so I can't see any other questions that's come through to me direct or on chat and Q&A. So just to wrap up today's session, so James, big thank you to you for today's session, but also the previous two webinars in the Copilot series. And thank you everyone for registering and attending today and for your engagement. It's been really good to have you along. I'm sure this won't be the last Copilot webinar that we'll do, probably even this year. We'll be there's new stuff coming out all the time, and there'll be lots to talk about. So yeah, just a big thank you to everyone, and have a good afternoon, and we'll see you on the next event. Thank you very much.